In the 1880s, in Liverpool, England, a group of women ran an extraordinary cooperative.
I think everyone is familiar with the concept of women sticking together in times of trouble, but you normally assume that it's going to be a helping in a pleasant way.
The plan was simple. Insure everyone in their immediate acquaintance, then kill them one by one.
There were 4 women who were actually killing. And then there were 5 or 6 others who were concerning themselves solely with the insurance.
The women's cunning netted them a small fortune and turned the British insurance industry upside down.
I admire them in a strange sort of way. They worked out the insurance rates, how would they get the best rates for different people. They knew all the rules and regulations of the insurance and burial clubs, virtually backwards as far as I could work out.
Together, they formed a predator pack. More common among male perpetrators, the female pack can be just as formidable.
The pack mentality can certainly take over in a situation where you have a number of perpetrators with a common goal to obtain money. That money makes people do all kinds of things.
No one was spared. Siblings, husbands, strangers. Like young boarder Maggie Jennings.
There's probably one person in the group that's the leader, the alpha female. The one who came up with the idea, who drew up the plans, who gave the orders, and everybody else pretty much followed in line.
In Liverpool, the pack's leader was Catherine Flanagan. Second in command, her sister, Margaret Higgins. Their method? Poison.
Arsenic obtained from flypapers. It was very readily available. All little shops would have the flypapers. You'd soak them in water and obtain a liquid, which then could very easily be added to the food. And women being the ones who provide the food, they could mix what they wished.
Arsenic was not only easily available to the Liverpool sisterhood, its symptoms were much like common illnesses of Victorian England.
The slums of Liverpool at the time would have been hideous places. There was no public sanitation. There wasn't running water. People were crowded into small areas, and disease is a very natural outcome to those circumstances.
No suspicions were raised when victims like Maggie Jennings died in the prime of life.
The doctors were expecting to find the diseases of poverty, malnutrition, and insanitary conditions. The women, therefore, made sure that the doctors found something that would fit with what the doctors were expecting.
With every death came an insurance payout to one of the group, to be later shared.
Maggie Jennings, for example, was insured for over £112, and those insurances were started approximately 12 months before she died. So that was a very good rate of return for an investment.
A good return indeed, when a laborer's weekly wage was less than £1, not even a couple of dollars. With premiums of just a few pennies a month, unscrupulous citizens could use England's life insurance companies for murderous gain. The women in the Liverpool syndicate were illiterate, but that didn't hinder business. Insurance brokers at the time were eager to sign up customers for their own commissions.
They would be paid 1 year's premiums as their commission. So obviously the more people they could be encouraged to insure, the better. And if somebody was not sure about the right answers, they would make the answers up as they went along.
This confluence of poison, poor hygiene, and exuberant sales pitches created the perfect storm of murder.
Victims were chosen depending on how old they were they ill, could they be hastened, could they get insurance for them, and if so, how much? And they would choose 2 or 3 victims a year and simply kill them.
Greed can become a monster that feeds on itself. And it's one of the toughest things in the world to keep a lid on.
The Liverpool syndicate operated undetected for at least 4 years. Their final tally would shock the country.
It's very complicated to explain who killed who. And so this is a little diagram which shows you've got the 2 sisters here. Certainly they killed Thomas Higgins, that's one husband gone. They probably killed the other husband, John Flanagan, as well. They certainly killed a son, a daughter-in-law, daughter-in-law's mother, a lodger, a little stepdaughter of 12, neighbours, friends, anyone else really that they could get their hands on.
It's believed the syndicate murdered at least 17 people for profit. If there was any remorse, it seemed lost in a web of shared liability. In 1883, after 4 years, the group's power was finally extinguished. A suspicious relative convinced authorities to test the body of Margaret's husband. Police found arsenic, then pieced together a long trail of death. Enough evidence was found to convict Catherine Flanagan and her sister Margaret Higgins. Newspaper reports describe how they hung side by side from the gallows. The others escaped prosecution. As any business person knows, if you can match service with customer need, there's opportunity for profit. For Amy Archer Gilligan, that opportunity came with the elderly.
Amy Archer Gilligan presented herself to the world as this very innocent Christian woman, projecting this veil of just a caretaker who wanted to take care of the sick and make a living at it.
In 1907, in Connecticut, Amy was ahead of her time, launching one of New England's first nursing homes.
She was a pioneer of elderly care at the turn of the century in New England. She kind of pioneered this whole idea of nursing elderly people, which later turns into convalescent homes, this kind of thing.
Seniors like Franklin Andrews signed up for a peaceful, caring home in which to spend their twilight years.
The marketing ploy was $1,000, and I give your relative, your elderly person, life care. And life care meant they stayed in the home, she took care of them, fed them, clothed them, gave them medicines.
There was no time limit. As long as the customers lived, Amy promised to care for them.
You know, it seemed too good to be true, and people lined up.
Clients and their families hoped for a long and restful life. But Amy's business plan called for something else. Turnover.
Let's set the scene. Picture a calm and peaceful New England night. Patients are readying themselves for bed. They've just finished dinner. You have Amy Archer Gilligan in the kitchen, mixing up a batch of warm lemonade. And warm lemonade at the time was an elixir for if you had the flu or you had an ailment.
Amy kept her overheads down and vacancies up with arsenic.
She understood her market for death very thoroughly. Her whole marketing genius was get the person in there, let them stay there for maybe a month, knock them off, and she's got $1,000 in her pocket. It sure beats changing bedpans for a living.
Amy's calculations went further. To conceal evidence of her poisoning, she counted on an old mortuary practice.
Well, basically, embalming fluids were preservatives, and they contained alcohols, formaldehyde, and they often contained a number of heavy metals like arsenic. Embalming, of course, being done prior to any post-mortem examination or prior to any specimens being taken for toxicology.
Amy had a near-perfect cover. Elderly clients were expected to die, sooner rather than later. And if there were any suspicions, forensic tests would be contaminated.
Amy was very good at marketing and business. She would sell a bed to the patient, kill them, and probably have someone lined up to take that bed before that patient even was taken to the morgue.
But Amy's business plan had a fatal flaw. Medical records of the time may have misrecorded the cause of death, but they could not hide the number dying under Amy's care.
The returns of death certificates to the office of the Windsor Town Clerk show that there have been 60 deaths at the Archer home since the place opened in the fall of 1907.
Over time, a case mounted against Amy Archer Gilligan, but police needed evidence. Franklin Andrews' body was exhumed and tested positive for arsenic. No surprise for an embalmed body of the day, but there was one anomaly.
Well, they found his stomach loaded with arsenic. Enough to kill several men. That was the quote.
Such levels could only have come from ingestion.
Right here, the Hartford Courant reports, it is the belief of the authorities that the wholesale murders have been committed at the Archer home.
Amy was convicted of murder and declared insane. She spent the rest of her life in an asylum. By the time she died, arsenic embalming fluid was banned. Belle was a good catch. She had profited from a string of insurance claims. She'd lost a candy store to fire, and 2 husbands in suspicious circumstances.
Belle had 48 acres here. Chickens, pigs. You know, she advertised and said that she had all this. And she did have all that. She just didn't include what she did with the people. She had an allure. Many men came and thought they weren't going to be staying, but they did.
In 1908, one victim to fall for Belle was Norwegian Andrew Helgeline.
He was just one of those people that answered one of her ads.
Convinced his future would be here with Belle, Andrew surrendered his life savings, $3,000.
She kept men here even when they came here and didn't intend to spend the night, or they stayed and they went back and got their money and came back.
By the time Andrew Helgeline settled in LaPorte, Belle had 3 foster children to raise. The farm's income was modest, so her new man's savings were a windfall. But this homely scene was a prelude to death.
Female serial killers frequently use poison as their weapon. They don't have to get close to the victim, they just have to get close to their food. And strychnine is something that one would expect to see on a farm.
Strychnine was commonly used as rat poison.
What an individual who takes strychnine will feel is initially perhaps a sense of anxiety or nervousness. Then they'll notice muscle twitches and muscle spasms. And then they actually get into almost a seizure-like state where they have convulsions. These contractions are painful. And the victim is conscious throughout this whole process and probably terrified.
It would take two types of people to be able to watch that. A sadist would probably enjoy it, or a cold-hearted individual for whom killing was no big deal. The greater gain, getting their money, was worth whatever they had to do to get it.
But Belle's treachery would go much further. It would rank among the most grisly crimes in Indiana's history. Belle's story took a mysterious twist one spring evening.
There was a handyman that was in that house, and when he went to bed that night, the occupants of the house were Belle and 3 children. The fire began at about 4 o'clock in the morning.
The Gunness farm was razed, its occupants consumed. The only survivor, Belle's handyman.
When they got down through the ashes into the basement, there were 4 bodies there, 3 children and a female.
And there was more. Investigating the fire scene, workers noticed soft spots around the farm and began to dig.
They would find all of the victims wrapped in gunny sacks, parts of them. They had been all dismembered, fit into these sacks with lime. There were children that were in her care, and of course the men who came to visit her and never got away.
Among the victims would be Andrew Helgeline, the partner wooed from Norway.
They found him in a garbage pit where Belle had carried garbage, fish heads, tomato cans. It smelled terrible. That was the excuse for the smell.
Other human bones suggest the Gunness farm pigs helped conceal further victims.
I think the fact that Belle threw the body parts of her victims into a pig trough is a pretty good indicator as to the type of person that she was, how she felt about these men that she killed. What kind of final send-off is that for someone that was a human being to throw their body parts in a pig trough? Well, that's the kind of person she was. She didn't care. That's where she thought they belonged.
Altogether, 14 bodies were found, including Belle's foster children.
Probably she had given poison to her 3 children and killed them. Maybe with a hammer blow too, because there was found holes in their skull after the fire. How could a mother do a thing like that?
There's another mystery. Did Belle perish in the fire? The only adult female body left few clues.
At that time, they thought it was Belle dead in the fire.
But the body was smaller than Belle's. And inexplicably, the skeleton was headless.
There is no logic to the fact that there were her children's skeletons intact, and then the one adult skeleton, which one would think would be hers, the head is missing. And the head, of course, would be the one part of a skeleton that would have the most identifiers.
Was this just another of Belle's insurance scams? Tourgette's search for the truth is not yet over. In this courtroom in 1908, jurors heard how the headless body seemed too small for Belle's large frame. One theory was the fire had shrunk the body.
Well, you know, they tried to say that just like a roast, this body cooked up and got skinny then, you know, skinnier than Belle was. But the children were still the same size. And their heads were all down there.
Despite conflicting evidence, jurors found the headless body was Belle Gunness, but many believed otherwise. And 23 years later, there was one more twist.
There was a real division within the community as to whether or not she died in the fire or whether she escaped and basically was on the run.
I absolutely believe that she escaped. The head was never found to that female body. She had a whole week to get away between the time when the fire was discovered and then the first body in the ground was discovered.
23 years later, a local newspaper speculated that this Californian murderer, fitting Belle's projected age, could be her.
Then they sent a picture back here, taken in a very strange pose with her hands like this. Well, why would you take a picture that way? I think that's why she did it. She's clever.
If Belle did feign her death, there could well have been more victims.
It is unlikely that her murderous behavior would stop. Being a fairly young woman at the time, less than 50, she was into it. So I'm guessing she simply relocated and resumed her activities elsewhere.